Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. Stick around and we'll leave you with a movie to watch over the weekend with your family or that special someone. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays. And before we jump into the watch list for the night, I'd like to say something very briefly. I have really enjoyed being consistent this entire quarter with my shows here on What to Watch Wednesdays and What to Watch Weekends by extension. We've got movies that have been in the same series, or they've been lumped together, or they've been very consistently associated with one another, whether that be by director, by genre, by style, or just being in the same series of movies. You know, it's really easy and very convenient for people to follow along with. So I decided to mix some things up, and I'm deciding to not do that this week. I'm going to have fun and cut loose a little bit, because tonight's movies are three where only two of them are directed by the same guy. One of them is from 1977, and the other two are past 2010, right? And the only thing that's really in common with all of them is that they all feel like a hallucination. All three of them feel like absolute hallucinations. So when I say I'm cutting loose, I'm not cutting so loose that we're talking about three completely different movies. We're just not talking about something that's been as consistent for the entire quarter. I'm going to skip over explaining myself, and I'm just going to jump into the three movies on our watch list tonight, because it consists of Suspiria from 1977, Mandy from 2018, and Beyond the Black Rainbow from 2010. And I should even mention that Mandy from 2018 and Beyond the Black Rainbow are both directed by Panos Cosmatos, a Italian-Canadian director. So even then, they're not super disparate. I just threw these three together because, again, they all feel like hallucinations. And when we come back from the break, we'll talk about how the first movie, Suspiria, achieves that effect. So stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Suspiria from 1977, available to watch now on Amazon Prime. The basic plotline of Suspiria follows Susie, a young American ballerina who moves to Germany to attend a prestigious German ballet school, right? As you do. As a kind of a coincidence, one of the students at this ballerina school is murdered the night she tries to move in. When I'm talking her, I mean Susie, not the girl who gets murdered, right? Okay? So that's not good. And Susie must now figure out why did that happen? Because there's no way that was a coincidence that she got murdered. Because she was running out of the school right before I found out that she got murdered. This is Susie's internal brain. She's like, well, I saw that girl just last night when I was trying to get in, and she ran out the door, acting very suspicious. I don't think this is a coincidence whatsoever. And she's very right, but that would get into spoilers, and I'm instead going to backtrack and tell you about Suspiria just a little bit. Here's some much-needed background. Suspiria is directed by Dario Argento, an Italian film director. He is known for, if you haven't heard that name before and you're not familiar with his work at all, if you have been listening to What to Watch Wednesdays for the past couple weeks, you may remember that I talked about the film Dawn of the Dead by George A. Romero. It's part of the Dead trilogy. You know, you've got Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead, right? So Dario Argento was involved in Dawn of the Dead, of those movies. In Dawn of the Dead, it was known that some of the music was composed by the progressive rock band Goblin, an Italian progressive rock band, right? So Italian director, Italian progressive rock band, and then we have Suspiria, which is an Italian horror movie. And Dawn of the Dead was also a zombie horror movie, right? Okay, so you see where I'm drawing the lines in the sand here to connect the dots, right? Okay, now follow me here. In Suspiria, one of its most well-known aspects is the music composed by Goblin, our good friends at Goblin, who did some of the music for Dawn of the Dead, objectively the best music from Dawn of the Dead. Right? Now, imagine that. We've got an interesting connection to a movie that I have reviewed here on What to Watch Wednesdays only about 3 to 4 weeks ago. Now let me tell you right now why this is important. The Goblin soundtrack is the best part of Suspiria, hands down. Full stop. No exaggeration. There are good parts to Suspiria. And then there is the music. The Goblin soundtrack, just the main theme alone, portrays basically everything you'd need to know about this movie. If you listen to it, you'll get a perfect feeling for the experience you would have, the emotions of the characters, the way it makes you feel after the fact. All of that contained into the main theme, which is about 6 minutes long. Sure, it's a bit longer for a standard musical piece. For a progressive rock band, that is absolutely nothing, let me tell you. Now, here's the problem with really good music. And when I say really good music, I should more so clarify that the Goblin music is on the next level. The problem with it is that if you have something so untouchably good in a movie, like the Goblin soundtrack in Suspiria, if there are some elements that don't quite muster up to that, then it's going to be noticeable. And one of the biggest casualties, aside from the on-screen casualties within Suspiria, because the one girl at the beginning is not the only person who gets murdered, the biggest casualty to the quality of the movie itself is the fact that for a horror movie, the suspense does not suspensing. Let me repeat that in a way that is grammatically correct. The suspense does not carry as hard as it should. And it should definitely carry pretty hard when you have this crazy, strange, bizarre soundtrack to go with your movie. This music enhances everything but the suspense. You've got the set design that looks helplessly Baroque, but also extremely Technicolor inspired. When I say that, it sounds like a mishmash of words. Look at pictures. I can't physically describe how this set design looks. I can fully describe how the lighting works. We've got contrasting colors with bright reds and bright greens and bright blues and bright magentas, and maybe even a bright yellow here or there, all cycling through each other, all contrasting with each other, all contrasting with the colors of the set design perfectly. And the music enhances both of those things in spades. So, with something so bright and music so wonky, you better believe that the atmosphere is perfectly hallucinatory. It feels like an awful fever dream. I even felt like physically sick to my stomach before going into the movie. I don't remember exactly why that was, but I can tell you that it wasn't because of the movie. It was more so for the expectations of knowing, okay, this is a bit of a different movie. This is something that kind of notoriously is a bit kind of grotesque, kind of known for being horrifying. And the Goblin music was the thing that messed with me even more with that mental state going in. I was also kind of tired, so that definitely didn't help any physical feelings I was having at the time. The Goblin soundtrack, the lights, and the set design all mesh perfectly and made it such a mind-bending experience. If the suspense was better, I would really, really, really like Suspiria. In its current state, rather unfortunately, when something like that falls short, you notice it. For me, it's not a deal breaker, but it's not something that makes me go, oh, Suspiria, you gotta watch this. You gotta watch it. If you're a horror fan, specifically. If you're not a massive horror fan, I still wouldn't say exactly watch it. It is kind of brutal and very much horror-esque because of its murder scenes. I mean, there is blood in the movie, but it looks like paint. And when I say it looks like paint, I mean it is red paint. It's very clearly red paint. It's the fakest looking blood I think I've seen, right? That doesn't make the contents of the scene with the blood any less intense and difficult to watch. Just means it looks kind of cartoony in a way. And even then, that would like enhance it if the suspense leading up to those deaths was any good. I could really go on and break down exactly why the suspense doesn't work, but for that to work, I'll go into more detail this Saturday on What to Watch Weekends. So instead, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we will jump into a movie that I have zero problems with in comparison to Suspiria, which will be Mandy from 2018, so stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Mandy from 2018, available to watch now on Plex, an ad-supported streaming service. So, the basic plotline of Mandy follows Red and Mandy, two boyfriend and girlfriend, older couple, who come into contact with this crazy cult leader by the name of Jeremiah Sand, who's more crazy than just having the name Jeremiah Sand, let me tell you, because he ends up kidnapping Mandy, rather unfortunately, and Red must go find her. Or at least that's the Cliff Notes version, because if I go any deeper than that, we're going to get into spoiler territory. So I'm going to backpedal a little bit, and I'm going to tell you right now that Red is played by the one, the only, the well-known, the regarded, and sometimes the disliked Nicolas Cage. Now, I like Nicolas Cage enough. I do rather like him, actually. And I haven't seen a lot of Nicolas Cage movies. I'm not the biggest fan. I just like him well enough. And so it may seem hyperbolistic to say what I'm about to say next, but I'll quantify it. Nicolas Cage plays Red in this movie, and in my opinion, it is his best performance. Or at least from my perspective, it's my favorite performance by Nicolas Cage that I have seen. Red is this incredibly interesting person who's very mundane, who has he works as a lumberjack, just cutting down trees with a chainsaw, kind of boring. And he's been doing it for a while, and he's got his girlfriend Mandy, who paints pictures, and they have a very loving and healthy relationship. When Mandy is kidnapped from him, he turns into a completely different person. Not even when she's kidnapped from him. When something else later down the line happens, he transforms into a completely different person. And not only is that transformation worth watching, it's worth watching double so when it's done by Nicolas Cage. That right there is insanity to the highest degree. Along with being insane, it is also very trippy. Mandy is a total hallucination dream, fever dream, acid trip, however you describe it, it is that. Full stop. We've got bright reds, bright purples, we've got bright blues, bright lights. Everything is so excessively and over the top bright. It is crazy. Just like with Suspiria, we've got specific choices of colors. We've got things that contrast very well with each other. Although, unlike Suspiria, it's a lot more kind of one color all the time in certain aspects and certain shots. But it adds to that atmosphere of this looks unnatural. It feels unnatural. One of Mandy's greatest strengths, even in comparison to something like Suspiria, is that it allows you to really just soak in and feel the moments, feel the action, feel the things that are happening, and kind of just exist in the headspace of the people who made it, specifically Panos Cosmatos, the director of the movie. To feel what it's like to be within the headspace of Panos Cosmatos is something that I was incredibly gifted with when I watched Mandy. And unfortunately, it means that sometimes the plot takes a bit of a back seat. And when I say unfortunately, I mean that just kind of by extension, the plot takes a backseat and things don't really pick up until about 40 minutes in. I have to kind of point that out from a factual perspective, that the plot doesn't kick off until 40 minutes in. But from a experience standpoint, it's completely fine because you're just existing in this very hallucinatory trip for most of it. And there's some progression. There's definitely some progression. It's just that when that 40-minute mark hits, it's when things start progressing even faster, right? It's a bit of a slow burn. And I can at least say, unlike a lot of movies that are called quote-unquote slow burns, this one is worth the wait fully. I can highly recommend sitting through it up to that point and after that point, definitely. It could eventually feel like a slog if you're not patient enough. And I know I have trouble with impatience, so I'm not calling anybody out whatsoever. If you don't have the patience for it, that's completely fine. But I personally highly recommend sitting through it until that turning point. Because when it hits the fan, and when I say it, I mean everything. When everything hits the fan, things take a turn. Things take a really drastic turn for the better in all the right ways. It sounds like I'm being so incredibly vague right now, and that's because I am. Because I cannot recommend this movie to people enough. If anything, I cannot be vague about this. I love Mandy so very much. I love it. It's a new favorite of mine. I watched it over the summer. I bought it on DVD at a Fred Meyer, and I was like, oh, I've heard about this. I've heard it's interesting. It looks kind of cool. I'll watch it. I sat there, and I was like, I adore this movie for one particular reason. When I go on to be a filmmaker, you better believe that I will make a movie like Mandy. A movie with a cult involved, with crazy colors, with just the feeling of existing in a headspace for a while. A movie that is a modern day cult classic, with hopefully a well-recognized actor, but if not, a gonzo performance that leaves an impression on the people watching it. That is something I want to achieve fully and wholeheartedly. And Mandy is exactly that kind of movie. Rather unfortunately, this is Panos Cosmato's second movie. And his first movie, Beyond the Black Rainbow, is not a movie that I would regard in such a high positional standpoint. But we will jump into that after the break, so stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our last movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Beyond the Black Rainbow from 2010, available to watch now on Tubi. Beyond the Black Rainbow, that's an interesting descriptor, isn't it? Well, let me get into a more interesting descriptor, which would be the plot line of Beyond the Black Rainbow. So the year is 1983, okay? And we follow Elena, a young psychic girl, who is kept in the experimental Arborea facility. It's called Arborea. It sounds like arbor, like plants and shrubbery. And she is being studied and watched by the very off-putting Dr. Barry. Or Barry Nile, I should have said. Dr. Barry Nile. And basically, throughout the course of the movie, Elena plans to do something. I think. Maybe. This is where my brain cuts out. And I can't really describe this movie with a plot summary anymore. Okay. Let's back up and say this. This was directed by the guy who did Mandy, the movie I just talked about. This was 8 years before Mandy, and I loved Mandy. I loved the trippy visuals. I loved how bright and colorful it was. I loved all the performances. I loved Nicolas Cage. I loved the transformation. There felt like there was some progression, even when it got a bit slow. Beyond the Black Rainbow feels like the precursor. No, I don't mean the precursor to Mandy. I just mean the precursor. That one precursor that comes before somebody does a good movie. Oopsies, kind of a burn. I'll give it some credit that there is at least a mild amount of plot, quote unquote, progression. It does go somewhere. It does build to something. Barry Nile ends up being a different person than he was at the beginning of the movie. That's for sure. And then Elena, she goes and does something. She seems to want to escape, although that's never conveyed with words. She definitely seems to want to escape, though. But that's the most credit I can give. As uncertain as I sound, it's because I'm very uncertain on how I can fully describe this movie without having my brain implode in on itself. So I'll just kind of jump around a little bit more. And I'll say that aesthetically, Beyond the Black Rainbow reminds me of Blade Runner and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Except those two movies never happened, right? In this instance, those two movies never happened, and they were instead fever dreams had by Stanley Kubrick and Ridley Scott. And then you take those two fever dreams and you mash them up together like two pieces of discolored Play-Doh. And then you leave that lump of Play-Doh in the hospital for the next 5 months. That's exactly how I describe Beyond the Black Rainbow, if I'm being charitable. I like the visual style. It's very, very heavily reliant on deep red and flashing lights overlaid with red. Definitely a photosensitivity warning attached to Beyond the Black Rainbow. We've got an interesting thing of an iris expanding, and then there just being another iris inside that iris expanding. The black spot of an eye opening up with the kind of ridges of this like blue eye, then filling in the gaps as it expands even wider. It's hard to fully explain it without seeing it for yourself, but it does look really cool. Looking really cool is not the thing that gives you a good story. Having a good story is what gives you a good story. You don't exactly watch Beyond the Black Rainbow. You kind of just experience it, and you kind of take it in and you soak it up. Kind of like Mandy, except without as much progression and fun moments to it. It's a lot more restrained or unrestrained, kind of two sides of a very massive coin. You've either got the full-blown extremes, or you've got the very weird kind of restraint parts. Even then, the restrained parts feel extreme, and the extreme parts feel restrained. It's so difficult to fully explain this movie, but what I can fully explain is that I didn't exactly like it that much. I appreciated the visual style. I appreciated the musical score. And I appreciated the way those two blended together. It again reminded me very much of watching Suspiria and Mandy. Very bright colors, very interesting music that contributes to the atmosphere and the feel of it. But both of those movies at least had some plot progression. This movie feels like it's trying to avoid a plot. Now, when I say I don't like it that much, that's even coming from the perspective of watching it while you're tired and not exactly expecting a runaway awesome plot. It's a bit hard to fully nail down the feeling, but what I'm trying to get at, really, is that if you want to see a movie where you kind of just exist with it for a bit and mesh with its very hallucinatory feel, then I would recommend Mandy over Beyond the Black Rainbow. Because they're by the same director, and Beyond the Black Rainbow feels like it's trying to do too much with too little, and not getting anywhere with it. Mandy feels like the perfect balance of knowing what they have, what they can do with it, and going all the way with it. If that was the best way I could describe it, I will leave it right there, because that's all I can really say. Did I like it? Not really. Do I recommend it? Not really. Is it interesting to watch when you're very tired and looking for a fever dream of the movie? Of a movie, not the movie. If you're looking for a bit of a fever dream, yeah, but you could also just watch Mandy instead. It's not required viewing. But if that sounds interesting to you, don't let me stop you. And if my ramblings sound interesting to you, then hopefully I haven't stopped you from finding interest in tuning in to What to Watch Weekends this Saturday from 8 to 10 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg. Same place, same time, longer show, more movies. Please do make sure to also follow What to Watch Wednesdays on Instagram at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. And as a very special announcement, if you type in at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces, into the YouTube search bar, you will end up finding a YouTube channel called What to Watch Wednesdays. Yes, that is my YouTube channel. And what's that? There will in fact be a video uploaded to that. It will be an archived episode of What to Watch Wednesdays, specifically from January 7th of this year, 2024, the first episode I did this entire year. It was a review of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And do you have any interest in that whatsoever? Highly recommend checking that out. Please do. It'll be great. And please do make sure to just subscribe to that said channel if you want to see more, because for the next couple weeks, I can guarantee you there will be a new episode on that channel every Wednesday at 8 p.m., same time as the live show. So please be sure to check that out as well. And with that, I will also be back here on What to Watch Wednesdays next Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg. And I will see you then, where I will tell you all what to watch. See ya.